Good afternoon. Now I'll bring the regular afternoon meeting of Township Council to order. And the first item is the adoption and receipt of the agenda items. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Fox, and seconder, Councillor Qualley. All those in favor? Opposed and carried. Next item is the adoption of the minutes of the regular afternoon meeting on December 11th. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Fox, Councillor Whitmarsh seconds. Any errors or omissions? Councillor Arneson?
Yes, thank you, Worship. I just noticed at item B2, there's no record of the mover or the seconder of item B2 in the minutes in my copy. I just wanted to point that out for clarification.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, they've seen it. They'll fix it. Okay. With that correction, then I'm not sure we know who it is at this moment, but you'll look into that and make the correction. Thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed and carried. Thank you. And motion to resolve into special close for the items on the agenda and on table. I'll get a motion first. Councillor Qualley, seconder, Councillor Sparrow, and then I have Councillor Qualley.
Can I add a personnel issue, please?
Personnel. That's Qualley. And Councillor Davis.
Could I have I guess it would be a personal item?
Personnel.
Personnel.
Okay, and Councillor Fox. Property. Fox. Okay, so with that, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And I'll go to closed. All right, good afternoon. I'd now like to reconvene the regular afternoon meeting of Township of Langley Council. So we now move on to delegations, and we have Mr. Tim Chung here from Unifor Local 2002 to discuss the implementation of the National Pharmacare program. Please come forward and welcome here. If you again just provide your name for the record, and I'll have a timer for 5 minutes for you to present. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And you don't need to lean it, but it really picks up very easily.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
It's a good mic. Yeah.
Tim Chung, Unifor 2002, also a Township of Langley resident. Thank you. I thank you, Mayor Froese and Township councillors, for taking the time to listen to my presentation. My delegation today consists of, on the left here, Janet Andrews from the New West District Labour Council. There represents 58,000 unionized workers in 14 municipalities here in the Lower Mainland. Simon Lau from the Unifor Council, and Krista Lieben-Rowe that represents from the BC Council Executive that represents 28,000 Unifor members here in the Lower Mainland also, and British Columbia. And my lovely daughter and my lovely wife here. Okay, so as you can appreciate, every Canadian is very lucky to have and receive Medicare within Canada. But as you know, the administration is very costly based on provincial budgets. Without a universal prescription drug plan, coverage in Canada vastly differs depending on where you live. British Columbia has the lowest rate of access to prescription medications in the country. Like Manitoba, access to public coverage is based on family income and requires a deductible, which is proven to reduce access. Now, based on the statistics from the Canadian Labour Congress, 29% of British Columbian citizens, more over than any province in the country, have said that, or they know of someone in their household that hasn't taken medication because they couldn't afford to do so. Public spending in British Columbia covers less than half of the cost of the prescription medicine, meaning that they're not funding it like they should. An estimated 1 out of the 3 of the province's 2.3 million workers, 770,000 members, don't have health benefits. In Canada, only 27% of the part-time workers have a prescription drug coverage. That means in 2015, 3/4 of British Columbia's 480,000 part-time workers didn't have a prescription drug coverage. BC Fair Pharmacare plan provides income-based coverage for both individuals and families, basing deductibles and maximums on household annual income. Once a deductible amount has been reached, the province's Pharmacare plan contributes to any additional eligible costs for the rest of the year. Beneficiaries are responsible for all the co-payments up to the annual family maximum. This patchwork coverage leaves many British Columbians without access to medication they need, either because they don't have a prescription drug plan or they don't have plans that don't cover the cost. Everyone should have equal access to prescription drugs they need regardless of where they live. It's time for a universal prescription drug plan. With the implementation of a fair pharmacare, we can reduce the cost of our prescription drugs with a broader mandate, negotiate better costs for the pharmacare Canadians need. With the better cost for pharmacare, this can reduce the burden of employers having to pay as much as extended pharmacare, and the fact that healthy employees are a benefit to all. I've attached in the City Council documents that you have in front of you a pharmacare backgrounder, the Union of BC Municipalities and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities resolution, and if passed by the Township of Langley, a resolution that will state that the Township of Langley will call on the British Columbia government to work with the other provinces and territories and the federal government to develop and implement a national pharmacare program. That's my presentation.
Thank
you very much.
I do have some questions here, or comments. Councillor Fox.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for coming out and bringing your family as well as your coworkers. So I just want to go back over, and you went through it fairly quickly, and I appreciate that.
I only got 5 minutes.
You only got 5 minutes. So in terms of provinces that have already a universal drug plan, how many have it at this point in time?
None.
None.
There's no national pharmacare program. Every province is provincially mandated.
And every province in that provincial mandate is different, across the country.
So if you look at the document that I gave you under the, I think it's the, here, one sec. The Union of BC Municipalities.
Right?
So, for example, British Columbia realized this, and they renegotiated, and in the statement, they renegotiated their drug plan to better it, but it was only for British Columbia. So everybody's doing it, but they're saying, hey, listen, it's better to implement this together as a whole. I'll give you an example. Like here in the beautiful township that we live in, everybody loves Costco and the co-op in Aldergrove, right? They see the benefit of negotiating in volume amounts in order to lower the cost that benefit everybody. If every province is doing it separately, why not do it all together? It's basically the best way to do it. But I understand that when you do it or implement it, there's got to be due diligence and you got to do your part. But that's your question.
And so that's your focus, is a national,
Pharmacare
across
program.
the province and territories Pharmacare program.
Absolutely.
And Unifor, as if I understand it, is represented by different locals right across the country in varying different employment sectors.
Absolutely. So this affects our union indefinitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You and Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you very much for coming. Actually, I did have a couple of questions about this. I know that there's a couple of organizations locally in the city as well as the township that are very interested in this proposal. And I know that it's very topical at this time just because of the high cost of drugs. I'm wondering if you have done any research with respect to things such as what the costing of this project would be relative to what the proportional cost is for each province?
Yes, if you actually look in the documentation of Pharmacare backgrounder, if they actually do it as a national Pharmacare program, you can save about $5 billion. It's in the documents that you have in front of you.
Oh, okay.
The issue is there's got to be a will and a want. Right now, everybody, because the way the Medicare is set up in Canada, people are hesitant in giving up the control provincially, of course. And I'm not just talking about Pharmacare, I'm talking about other things too, right? But this is a discussion that needs to be done, right? So.
And I just wonder if you were aware, was this part of anybody's election campaign in the last federal election? Is this something that's off everybody's radar, or is this something that, you know, anybody's pursuing with an advocacy point of view?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. The issue is you got to have the discussion. There are a few things in Canada that you don't really talk about, which doesn't cause controversy, as you well know. Religion, Medicare, same-sex marriage, whatever. But I don't recall personally myself, anybody. I'm not that in tune with what's going on in the federal politics. But I would imagine it's an important discussion because it affects everybody in Canada. Anybody that has Medicare or needs Medicare.
And just one final question. So I may have missed something, but the degree to which provinces are still responsible for collecting the funds for that, or is that something that's just going to be administered by the federal government itself?
Well, it's different, right? Some provinces collect, some provinces don't. British Columbia is coming to that model right now, where, as you well know, we used to pay a premium for MSP. We're dividing it this year, and maybe next year in the new budget it will be incorporated in your taxes. I do believe some other provinces already do that. Alberta does that. Ontario does that. I'm not familiar about the other provinces, though, right?
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Richter.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. I think it's extremely topical. I note in your backgrounder here that over the last 2 decades, prescription drug spending has gone from $3.6 billion to almost $11 billion in 2015. And I suspect a large part of that is being driven by the pharmaceutical companies, particularly in the States, and their patents and so on. Do we know, is this something that we could do in Canada that wouldn't fall under the protections of NAFTA? Because NAFTA, of course, is very controversial right now, and we may not even have a NAFTA if Donald Trump has his way in the near future. But is this something that would perhaps be ruled out by our federal government because of NAFTA, or is it something that our federal government could respond to?
There's two questions that you
Okay.
have there. First one is yes, it can be driven by pharmaceutical companies because most of the pharmaceutical companies are not in Canada. It's just the fact of the matter. Second of all is our population is growing older, right? More people are getting older. They say, and I don't have to give you the statistics, you know that the baby boomer generation, there's more seniors than there ever been before, which will put a crunch on the Canada pension plan. On the pharmaceutical sides, when you talk about NAFTA, it's not just NAFTA, it's CETA also, right? So a lot of the drug companies do make their drug manufacturing in Europe and in the United States. So, I'm sure, this is way beyond my scope, right? But I'm sure in those discussions, should NAFTA, they're talking about much more than just Pharmacare. They're talking about everything else, auto, whatever. But CETA is the same thing, right? So that was the biggest concern about CETA. For those of you who don't know, CETA is the European Trade Agreement. That was one of the biggest concerns because most of the pharmaceuticals are made in Europe, right? So, yes, absolutely. We don't know where it's going to go. It's going to be interesting to see. Trade negotiations are really delicate, especially at this time a political climate, if you know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, you say here in the backgrounder that 91% of Canadians want a national drug program. I can believe that. And another statistic that you might not be aware of, individuals use 80% of the health care that they're going to use in a lifetime in the last 10 years of their life.
Yes.
And part of that's pharmaceutical costs. So your resolution here that you'd like us to consider is that we call on the federal government to work with the provinces and territories to develop and implement a national pharmacare program. Do you or Unifor have any idea how receptive the federal government would be to a resolution like this? Are they interested in looking at a...
That's beyond my scope also. I do know that the Canadian Labour Congress is talking to the federal government about this, and I'll give you an example. On February 4th to the 6th, there's a lobby in Ottawa to the federal government talking about the Fair Pharmacare plan. I'm actually going to Ottawa to present this case to my elected MPs. So it's definitely a plan. It's hard to imagine between now and the next federal election whether or not it will be a campaign issue. But I'll give you an example, and I don't mean to pick on my family here. My wife, who at 18 broke her back in a car accident, she's missing 2 discs. She's on a regulatory drug plan. My eldest daughter, who's 27, was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 9. She's 27 now. She's on a regular drug plan. If we didn't have the great extended benefits that we have in providing that drug plan, I don't know how we would do it, because we would have to choose between living and eating and having a quality of life. But thank goodness that my employer has a good drug plan, and I can't imagine that they would want to pay any more than they have to, right? So for this resolution, it would fall into place with all the other cities that are listed, and it's in front of you: the City of Vancouver, the City of Burnaby, the City of Nelson, the City of Port Coquitlam. All it's doing is, it's a very light ask, is when the time comes, is just to ask the British Columbia government to have those discussions. That's it. Because if you don't ask, you're not going to get. And there's got to be a will and a want for someone to step forward to say, listen, this is beneficial for all Canadians. It's what we do.
So these resolution, like if we put this resolution on, I guess we would direct it, send a letter to the attention of our MPs in Langley and ask them to carry the message forward to Ottawa.
Your provincial, MLA, actually.
MLAs?
Yes.
And why not the MPs too?
Well,
it says that the township call on the federal government.
Yes, that too. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for bringing this up.
Thank you. Councillor Qualley.
Thanks for your presentation. I read the package before today, and just looking at the math, it looks like it'll save about $200 a person per year. That could significantly save the township taxpayers some money in terms of the benefits that we're paying to our employees and ourselves. So I think that there is this potentially a significant savings all the way down the line. one of your MPs, one of the elected MPs for the Langleys, is also part of the seniors committee federally. So he would probably be quite interested in hearing from you. You said you were going to meet with him in Ottawa, so Minister Aldag or MP Aldag would probably be happy to hear from you from a couple perspectives on this. I wonder if there's any consideration in terms of a national strategy or national program around better control of opioid prescriptions, overprescribing, or is there a potential that that could even be a bit further diluted? That would worry me, that there's less control over who's prescribing what and that sort of that management process. Is that something you guys are considering in this?
It isn't. This just talks about the funding portion of it. The ask that you're having is more on the policy side. So basically, this is about funding drugs in general. Let's say, no offense to the people who take opioids, but if you can lower that cost, then it would lower the cost for the province. Whether or not you administer it or who gets it or whatever, that's on the policy side, right? So
yeah, I just would worry that the two might sort of maybe dilute each other, that there'd be, you know, less accountability provincially around the access to it because they're not paying for it. So I'd just be really careful about not diluting policy because of who's actually paying for it.
Yeah.
So anyhow, just,
I know I can see your concern. Absolutely, it's a valid argument.
yeah. So you know, yeah. Thanks for the presentation. I think it's interesting, and I think it is really timely. And there's definitely an opportunity for some savings here. Nationally, I'd be concerned about Quebec. I think they already have a pretty generous policy provincially, so I'm not sure.
They're a distinct culture.
Yeah, but that's okay. We can carry on without them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You mentioned, I think you mentioned UBCM and FCM. Has a motion like this gone through the process, or because it already is at FCM?
I presented it.
Okay, you presented it, yeah, and they've accepted. So one of the processes that councils have in British Columbia is we go through our local local government. Lower Mainland Local Government Association, thank you, which then goes to UBCM, which then goes to FCM. And there's a time lag there because the local one is when, May? Is it?
It's open right now.
Open right now, and we have to have a resolution in if we're going to put it through that process by February 23rd or something. And then it goes to UBCM and hopefully gets approved at UBCM, then it moves up. So we get that, the force of all the municipalities behind it. And so what's the history with that? Maybe just a quick briefing on the history of where it is right now through UBCM and through FCM.
Okay, yeah. So if you look at the documents, the FCM is the same resolution that if you approve, you would follow under the line of the FCM with all these other cities. If you look at the UBCM, they've recognized, and I've included it in your documents too, they've recognized the importance of negotiating as, how do you say, as a province. A collective province. Yeah. And they actually have done what's called a Canadian Purchasing Alliance, and they've negotiated some savings to the current agreement. But they're still hesitant on the national Pharmacare program because they say that there's a further analysis that is better required for an understanding of potential and additional savings. Yeah, so they need more research.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's not that they're not for it. It's just that.
And that's, the question is, for this council to put something through, we want to have the most effect. So by putting it through our organizations, which then come together as a collective and lobby along with you, it's not just a resolution that stops as a resolution. No. If it goes to UBCM and FCM, then it has more weight in it.
Yeah, based on the note here, it says the FCM is in Halifax this year, and Unifor and the Canadian Labour Congress will be presenting at the FCM.
Okay, great. And Councillor Long, who is FCM or former FCM director.
Just so you know, FCM did pass policy about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, in 2016. So they're already on board with it. But I think you're asking for additional support. Yep. But as far as the FCM, it's already policy that they go after it.
Thank you.
I think adding our voice to that would be helpful, and we could forward it to FCM and also UBCM. So.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for your presentation and bringing this to light. It's something I'm sure it's all near and dear to everybody's hearts. If we haven't experienced it ourselves, we know someone who has. So,
thank you, Mayor Froese, and Township Councillors. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll move on to reports to council. And F1 is appointment of the chief and deputy chief election officers for the 2018 general local government election. And Councillor Fox moves, Councillor Davis seconds, and we'll be giving Bob Wilson a job. And if this fails, then Wendy's doing it. Is that correct? Yeah. Any discussion on F1? Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Through you, potentially, I guess, to Mr. Backen, I'm wondering if, I know we had a slight glitch the last time we had an election in 2014. I'm wondering if we can find out more about if we've undertaken any safeguards to make sure that if there is some kind of malfunction, that we are prepared for that in a way that creates lots of transparency and confidence in our processes.
We are looking at an updated version of Transmittal, but to be completely honest, we will be putting a giant sticker on the connection boxes that says, "Do not unplug me," and that will take care of the whole problem.
It's called, to try and avoid human error, if that was ever possible.
The staff at that location was being very proactive in cleaning up, and they just pulled the plug.
Okay,
So
I
we
didn't
will
hear
ensure-
the details.
Yeah.
It's just that, you hear so much about malfeasance these days that one has to take everything into account. So, well, thank you for filling us in, and let's hope we don't have any other kind of similar procedures going wrong.
I like the time delay. It gives us a nice party on election night. We're just kind of waiting. It's like a football game. Councillor Davis.
Maybe on a different note, it says here, I could see us appointing Bob Wilson for his management consulting, but are we putting Mrs. Bauer in a spot by just does she have time? Is this I don't know. And now I've put it out here. Now we're forcing her to do it. I just wondered, is that she's done it twice now? Is that something? Who says that she should do it? We're passing it,
But she is the clerk, Mr.
Yes,
Backen.
she volunteered, that's right, we'll stick with that story.
okay.
The short answer is, in the ideal world, it's best to have an independent chief election officer, but if that person should become ill or incapacitated, you need to have someone on staff that can step in. So whether it's Ms. Bauer or someone else, it's wise to have the independent paired with someone within the organization.
Okay, I know this sounds kind of funny, but I stepped on her toe an hour ago. And now I'm how is this, could this be a conflict of interest? I know Bob Wilson, he doesn't like me because I went into his office and smelled with cow manure and left an odor in his room. And we're voting on that. I just wonder, are we in a bit of a, well, I made it up.
I think,
the cow manure I didn't.
I think the short answer is you have to rely on their professionalism and that they're doing their job as staff and being professional and treating everybody equally.
Hence, the issue would be if there are any, criticisms of the independent party, they should be aired now. If there's any direct information, we're not aware of any, or we wouldn't be at this stage. I'm not suggesting there are any.
Okay.
But that's the way we'd process. And then the internal one, traditionally it defaults to the clerk or a deputy clerk simply because they're familiar with the processes. We could try to make the engineer do it, but usually he declines.
That's right. Okay, I know. I just to be a little light. Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to call the question for F1. F1 carries unanimously. Move on to correspondence. There are 3 pieces of correspondence, and I'm going to ask just to receive the correspondence first, and then Councillor Qualley moves, Councillor Sparrow seconds receipt. Any discussion on receipt? I'm going to call the question. I'll call it G1. Carries unanimously. On the tax revenue from cannabis sales, there is a consideration that we write a letter supporting regarding the tax revenue from cannabis sales to the provincial government. I certainly think that's something valid. The city of West Kelowna is suggesting 50%, and I would see no problem with entertaining a motion that we do the same thing. So if council wishes to, Councillor Sparrow in a second, Councillor Davis, discussion on that. So the motion would be, do you get the motion, Ms. Bauer? Okay, thank you. Councillor Qualley?
Thank you. I mean, I just don't have a good enough understanding of what the expectation will be from us in terms of enforcement and policing and all kinds of other expenses we're going to incur. Why are we only asking for 50? Why aren't we asking for 80 or 90? I don't have enough understanding of the business case for 50. Maybe it should be 70. So I just am questioning whether this is enough, or maybe this letter's a little bit premature until we understand what our responsibility is going to be fully in this.
Thank you. Councillor Fox?
Yeah, 50% sounds like, okay, well, let's have an equal share for them and for us. But we've got 127 square miles that we have to adjudicate in this particular community, and I'm not sure Kelowna, for example, is 127 square miles. I have a serious concern related to when this all comes down and we have quote-unquote licensed growers, and we know that there'll be many, many unlicensed growers who will continue to grow as they do now in the rural parts of our community. Is 50% going to be enough to enforce the regulations? Because we're going to have a significant increase in the numbers of, I'm not sure if they're going to be bylaw officers or they're going to be police officers. Who's going to have the jurisdictional oversight on this? But is 50% going to be enough to pay the bill, covering that much territory over time? And so I can see where 50-50 seems like a nice soft, but I could easily see where we would be far better to go for a 70-30 or an 80-20 split in our favor to ensure that we have the appropriate enforcement, because it's undoubtedly going to be our responsibility, the Township of Langley responsibility. So I would like to see an increase in the 50-50 to cover the fact that we have so much rural area that in this particular community.
Thank you. Mr. Backen, can you refresh my memory? The province negotiated with the federal government on a split, and it was more than 50-50. What was that? Do you recall?
The context of this issue, Your Worship?
Only the province, the tax money that would be accruing from the sale of cannabis, the federal government has agreed with the province to split it, and they were going for 50-50, and the province negotiated higher. Was it 75%? I was wondering if we
I have to check, Your Worship. I'm not certain.
Okay, just wondering if we kind of followed the same sort of thinking. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yeah, I guess I have the same concerns as the two previous councillors mentioned. I'm not sure if today we can even come up with the appropriate number. I think there's more information to be found in terms of what our costs actually might be, how much of it is downloaded onto the individual municipalities. So I'm wondering if there's a way to phrase it in such a way that maybe this is a two-part thing. Today we certainly would acknowledge the need to have that financial support to cover our costs and to, in a fair and equitable way, but then maybe in a second part, to maybe that's 6 months or a year when we actually have more information, we can actually specify what those numbers might be. I think the last sentence in this letter that we have from Mayor Finlater says that this is an adequate and equitable share. And so maybe we sort of talk about that at this point we are asking the province to contribute to us an adequate and equitable share, or maybe beyond that. And then in a year from now, we actually can attach specific numbers to what that adequate and equitable share is.
You, Councillor Long.
Your Worship, I think we're all going to the same point here, that we should take the number out and write the letter that's saying that we require an adequate and equitable share of the revenue, and just leave it at that, leave it open. And we don't know what the number will be, but it needs to be adequate and equitable. So can I make that an amendment that we take the number out and staff word the letter in such a way that that we're there to get whatever we can?
Thanks. Just before I go on that, I'll just bring it back. It was a 75%. The provinces negotiated a 75%, just for your information. But if you wish to make that motion, I'm quite happy
I
with
think
that.
take all the numbers out. There's no use picking numbers out of a hat here.
Just an amendment to this motion to take the number out and put in What was the word? What words again?
Adequate and equitable share
be
to
negotiated.
support the costs and services incurred by local governments.
Okay, second by Councillor Richter, so I'm going to open up the amendment. Any discussion on that amendment? Councillor Sparrow?
Yeah, I think it could, I would be fine with that. I think, possibly maybe the wording of including just of a minimum of 50% or something. I honestly think it's going to be very difficult to even see that much. I would love us to get 75 or 80% or I think it's going to be a battle either way. I do agree that the cost will definitely be borne to the municipality for a lot of these issues, and the province won't be having to deal with it. But yeah, I mean, I'm fine with the wording as it is. Even saying or like I said, to a minimum of 50%. I think it should be equal. I don't know if I guess the wording equal and what was it? Equal and equitable share. Equitable. Sorry, it's an adequate and equitable. Is that share? Okay, is sufficient. I think that's fine. But I do think it's going to be a battle to see that. But we can at least ask for that much and see where we go.
Ask for it all. Councillor Richter.
Yes, Mr. Backen, aren't we getting a report from staff at some future point this spring with regards to an overall strategy for when this is legalized?
That is correct. We are actually working towards a policy regime and an enforcement process with bylaws. I'm not certain, Mr. Seff, you may know if we were going to actually get into revenue splitting.
It does not, Your Worship, and staff has provided comments to the province, and it would be very difficult to come up with a strategy as to what the implications might be without the understanding of what the province's position is going to be in the whole issue.
So would it be reasonable to perhaps pass this motion for now, but then ask staff to maybe delve into a percentage split when the report comes to council? We can modify our letter at that time.
We could, provided it's understood that the percentage splits are likely to be based on what other communities are recommending, because I'm not sure we have any empirical basis to arrive at a split. So I think if we understand that it's going to be based on a comparative to other municipalities, that works just fine.
Okay.
Councillor Sparrow.
Just sort of on that, as my understanding would be, this wouldn't be expected that each community would receive a different share. This is going to be, I would imagine, an agreement that the province would come up with where all of us, whether we're large or small or rural or urban, we're all going to have the same piece of the pie. So I think, a collective voice is probably important, that we all are saying we'd like a portion of it. Us being a little bit more broad, saying we're not necessarily putting a number on that, where we want it to be fair and equitable is important, but they're not going to look at us and say we get this much and another community gets a different amount. So I think just ensuring that we're adding to the voice to say we feel like it's fair that we get a portion, and but I don't think we need to worry about percentages compared to other communities.
Thank you, Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I'm in agreement with the fact that it is premature to attach a particular number to it. I think the language that we're seeming to direct ourselves towards is quite satisfactory, because in fact, until such time as we've got a better idea about how much it's going to cost us, maybe we need 95%, who knows. But it does pique my interest, actually, further to the federal government. So my assumption they're 50%, that they've already created a rationale why they need 50% as a result of this negotiation, because that's the other side of the equation that I'm not aware of. And my assumption then that has to be for, the prison system or locking people up, or I'm not sure what their rationale is for 50%, because, based on the inequity there, it seems that they're getting rather a lot under that bargain.
The federal government and the provinces negotiated a 75-25 split. It's 75% to the provinces and 25% to the federal government. They've already agreed to that. So.
Oh, okay.
So
okay, we're a creature of the province. Sounds good.
So then it's a matter of, like I say, the collective, the UBCM or whoever, negotiating this. So on the amendment, I see no further discussion. I'm going to call the question.
The question is on
On the amendment, just taking the word 50% out. G1. Carries unanimously. So the motion as amended, I still have a speaker's list. Councillor Richter, did you wish to add anything to the motion as amended?
So we're just sending the
Just
inequitable share
It's a
motion.
letter of support, that's right, without
Okay.
the number, yeah.
And who are we sending this to again?
To the same, we're sending a letter of support and to the same people that the mayor from West Kelowna did. So we're just supporting their letter. And it'll go to, I don't have the letter in front of me, Ms. Bauer. Provincial government, I'm not sure which, yeah, so that's where it's going.
So our MLAs then, as well?
Well, it goes to provincial government to the minister. We could copy our MLAs.
Yeah, our MLAs
certainly.
should be copied
Yep,
on it.
I think we take that as direction. Councillor Long?
And the LMLGA, why don't we copy them, because
Sure.
their meeting's in May, that's...
Okay. Okay, so with that, I'll call the question on G1. Carries unanimously. And the next two, G2, G3, there's a request there. Now, I had a brief discussion with Mr. Backen on this, and I understand that, and Mr. Seffi, that there is a access to applications on our website, and I'm wondering if staff would, if council agrees, send a letter to these two organizations explaining how they can access this information. And then a question for staff, I see Mr. Sheetmaker here. Is there an ability of people to sign up and have this sent to them, applications sent to them or notifications, or they just need to go on and check? Maybe Mr. Backen through TL alerts on that.
Your Worship, I think you're referring to the fact that we are trying to get development applications on the website within about a week, 5 working days of them actually coming in to provide a baseline. We had some discussions this morning about whether we could actually segment them by region to make it easier, and I think we can do something like that. As to TWL alerts, Mr. Sheetmaker, Mr. Seffi, any comments on actually sending out alerts?
Your Worship, there are I guess, approaches or mechanisms in place for residents to request what was referenced, I think, by Councillor Fox, what we call e-alerts. So they can provide us with a topic or the information that they're seeking, and automatic notifications will be sent out to them beyond what's available on the website.
Okay. So if that's something perhaps the staff could send a letter out to these groups explaining the process. Would that be something we could do, Mr. Seffi? Yeah, okay. Okay, do we need a motion for that, or just direction? I'll move. Do you want to do a motion? Maybe council would like to do a motion. Councillor Fox, Councillor Whitmarsh seconds. So on the motion, there's a speaker's list here, so just to send that direction. Councillor Davis?
Okay, I guess my question was, how much, the township page, how much time, I think they're both of them have commented on reasonable time, but how much time is it, if they want to find out, they should come and get on how much time, you said a week? No.
Generally about 5 to 7 working days from the application that appears on our website.
And yeah, okay, so but that's basically, would there be a legal thing, like a conflict of, not a conflict, but anything up until that point? I guess it's all public. It's all public.
The application's public. We can't, I guess, predetermine what applications might be coming in, and that would be several months prior to the application being brought forward for council's consideration. And in fact, if it's a development application, there'll even likely be developer open houses that are required before it even gets to the public hearing stage.
Yeah, so they have the ability to get to them, because if we go back too far, like some of these applications may not even come. Like they, so there's no. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Councillor Long?
Worship, this is critical, I think, that every citizen in the township has access to the same information, any other groups, any interested parties, neighbors, neighborhoods. So I think it's a fair way that everyone can get access to information that they want. And
the process exists. We just want to explain to them how they can access it. That's what this would do. Councillor Richter?
So we're going to send each of these community associations a letter saying that as associations they can sign up for the early alert system for applications in their areas. Is that what's going to happen?
And also the letter would state how they can access those applications. They're available to everyone in the township. So it'd be like that.
Yeah, but will they get like an automatic alert? You live in Brookswood, there's something coming up in Brookswood. You live in Willoughby, there's something coming up in Willoughby.
No, I think it'd be, I see Mr. Sheetmaker's head shaking. So the process is how they can access these. So it would be incumbent upon the resident or whoever represents these associations or any number of them or any resident to go on the website and go to the site, and then they can access. So if they did it on a weekly basis, they would have the same information everybody else has access to in the township.
So why could we not put them on an early alert system? Is that not possible?
Well, I'm not IT. I'll have to ask Mr. Backen if staff have information on that. But we want to keep it. I think the intent here is to keep it equal for everyone in the township, that everyone has equal access, and we're not discriminating.
Yeah, but the
one
point
group
is
against the
that
other.
they're inquiring about applications in their neighborhood which affect where they live.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. So it would be the same for anybody.
Yeah, they should get access.
Well, that's what we want to tell them the process.
So
Mr. Backen.
Mr. Backen, can we put an early alert system in for them?
Well, I think you're suggesting that we do actually meet their requirement that we notify them in some way. Right now, the policy that we have in place is that the access is open to all, that we don't identify them specifically unless there's a council resolution to go forward. And at this point, historically, we had some of those directions, but they were usually for derivatives of council organizations such as BIAs and whatnot. I'm not sure about any current ones. If council is directing us to actually try to communicate with them directly, we could do so. But my only fear is then, I'm sure these are worthy associations, but I'm sure there's going to be other people that would like to have direct notification as well. So it becomes a very complicated issue because we would then be probably responding to those on a case-by-case basis as to when there's developments occurring.
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm asking questions about it.
Fair enough.
And the question that I'm asking is, why can't we do the same thing with development permits as we do with garbage pickup, where you can sign up to get an alert each week about whether it's green bin only or green and black bin? I mean, can't we do that for development permits and people can choose to sign up for them or not?
I guess anything is technologically possible. We could create any system council directs. I'm not quite familiar with the black bin, green bin. I'm sure it works as very well. But I think what we're simply trying to do is an approach that would be more workable. The challenge we have is going to be delineating the areas, which Mr. Sheetmaker's indicated he's going to be working on, trying to actually segment the notices so that they can be found within certain areas such as Fort Langley, Brookswood, Murrayville, wherever they may be existing.
Okay, so, and that will be part of the letter that we're going to send then?
That's our understanding of the discussion, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, to educate them on the process that already exists. Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I'm noticing here that these are two specific requests, and relative to our desire to respond, are we also intending then to go beyond the scope of this? There's a new Aldergrove group, for example, that would probably be interested had they thought to make a similar kind of request. My other thought about this overall is that, generally speaking, I think in terms of our engagement strategy, it's best to let individuals, obviously, and groups know, not that we want to prefer one over the other in a timely manner, but I think the groups have more of a focused interest, I suppose, relative to their desire to represent the community. Also, though, I've just noticed when I was reading this report, you know, Vancouver, for example, has a somewhat informal approach on their own website where they just have listings, and it's not all the detailed information, but it's just like a little graphic and gives a street address and says, this is an update, and it's got a brief amount of information. It just seems so effective and so accessible when you put it forward that way. And it's not that one can take the place of the other if you're looking for more details, but it is a way just generally to make the information more accessible to people who are interested in finding it on our website. So I just put that forward for information.
Thank you. Councillor Fox.
Yeah, I'm going to throw a little caution out here because I think we can, we've had a request from two groups in our community. I would suggest probably if we turned the sod over, we would probably find 40 or 50 groups: environmental, transportation, bicycle, community groups, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We can start to try to accommodate every single person through a variety of mechanisms, whether it be alerts or otherwise. I think at some point in time, the engagement process that we've come forward with does put some responsibility on the individuals, the individual groups, to take a look every so often at our website. It does identify when developer-led open houses are, and so on and so forth. So at what point do we take the responsibility, and if we, for one reason or another, happen to miss something, then all of a sudden it's our responsibility, not that public group's responsibility. So I think we have to be very cautious here on just what our expectations are of our staff to get this information into the hands of people, and what the expectations of the community groups is to actually have people following the information that we've provided for them. And I think that if we try to look at this in the overall perspective and silo each one of these by community, then we have to look at siloing by content. For example, if it's an environmental issue, then maybe an organization like LEPS should be involved. Who's dealing with the rural ones, for example? There is no South Langley Community Association or Ratepayers Association, so nobody deals with them. So we're doing it with some, we're not doing it in others. I think that we have to be very careful that Big Brother here is not taking the responsibility away from the individual community associations and other groups, and then taking that responsibility if, for whatever reason, the information doesn't get into the right hands in an orderly fashion, which can and has happened. So I throw that caution out there.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
I actually would like to caution the same, just to reiterate exactly what Councillor Fox said. I think the people that are interested, they know where the website is if we show them how to get in there, and that's not overburdened, because a lot of, how much information, I know it's transparency, but if you're interested and you're involved, you go in, and if you know how to, if you can be showed how to do it, and you're going to have that. Anyhow, I'd like to echo what Councillor Fox said. We have to, on one hand, if we show them how to get in there and get that information, and it's in our community, well, that's okay. But to send a letter, it could, every application come in, we've got to, okay. I think Councillor Fox said it the way I think, and thank you.
Councillor Richter.
Well, this council has spent an awful lot of time and money and energy on public engagement, and here we're getting expressions and willingness for public engagement from two new associations in the community. I think we should be applauding them and trying to support them in every way possible, and I certainly don't see anything in their request that would tend to say they'd point the finger at us and say we were wrong if we didn't give them the timely notification. I think they just want access. Considering that these associations are made up of people who pay the taxes, and their taxes pay for the information systems here at the township, if we can arrange an early alert system, I think we should. I think it would be added benefit to encouraging public involvement going forward.
Great. Thank you. Anything else? No, I think it's great. These groups are interested in their communities, and I've gotten to meet, I know these people. I think it's great that they're interested and they want to know what's going on, and certainly our staff can let them know how to access that. And as Councillor Davis says, they're going to get in there and take a look at it. And I certainly do my research if I'm looking for something, and we'll certainly help them in every way possible to access the system that's already there. It's part of the, what do you call it, the open, what's the term for open access, open government, and we're really moving towards that. So this is great that they're asking for it, and we'll certainly help them through. So with that, I'll call the question on the vote. I'll call it G2. Is that? What is it? It's. Do you want to read the motion? Just.
That a letter be sent to the Brookswood Fern Ridge Community Association and the Willoughby Residents Association explaining the process for online access to development permit applications.
Thank you. Okay, questions called? Oh, there's a couple that haven't. There we go. And it's carried unanimously. Is there any other, minutes of committees. There's Heritage Advisory Committee and Seniors Advisory Committee. Could I have a motion to accept and receive? Councillor Qualley, second by Councillor Davis. Discussion on H1. Seeing none on receipt, I call the question on H1. Carries unanimously. Is there any other business? Oh, lights up like a Christmas tree. Councillor Long.
Good. In the distribution package today, Your Worship, there's a letter regarding the, they call it the 55-plus games. It used to be the senior games, but it is still the BC Seniors Game Society, encouraging us to perhaps put a bid in for 2020, 2021, or 2022 or beyond. And I think we should do that. And I would make a motion that staff consider applying for any one of those games for the township. Get our name in there.
So, you want as a motion, as seconded by Councillor Fox. So I've got that motion on the floor, and that would still require a report to come back to council before any decisions are made. Is that so? If the motion encapsulates that, then
staff get it.
Yeah. Okay. So, any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Lost my track.
It would be I1.
I1, thanks. Carries unanimously. Okay, and Councillor Davis.
Yes, I received a email from a Barbara Bell regarding dog feces as being thrown into the Yorkson Creek, and she'd like to see more signs and bins installed in Walnut Grove and mainly along waterways and trail systems in Yorkson. And she's sent some pictures, and because Yorkson is Yorkson Creek, there we have trails through there, and that's a great place to take a dog for a walk. But so I just was wondering, can I send this to staff to see if we have something to?
I'll ask Mr. Seffi. There's been some work, and there's actually a memo from staff back, or a letter back to this person. So, Mr. Seffi, maybe just elaborate a little bit on some of the work that's been done on this.
Thank you, Your Worship. The letter has gone to, I believe, many members of council, if not all, and staff has acted on it. Staff has conducted an investigation, including a review of appropriate signage and waste receptacles in the area, and will take further action as needed.
DNA analysis.
DNA analysis.
And whereabouts did I?
It went. That email went to each member of council individually. And I think each member of council sent it to another member of staff, and they worked on it. So,
sorry,
you're okay.
Well, you can't keep after the dog
The
doodle.
response was phenomenal by staff, but it's helpful if each member. Yeah. And there's response in what page? Distribution January 11th, and let's just try and find out what page is it.
Came from Tess Rose.
Yeah, Tess Rose. That's number 8 of item number 8 on the January 11th. There's a good response on that one.
Hey, thank you, and sorry about that.
No problem. No, that's great. Councillor Fox.
Yeah, January the 11th one, item number 5, which is the property dumping concerns, where the one neighbor is upset about another neighbor dumping horse manure. I don't think it's our responsibility to be looking after horse manure. Isn't that a FERB? Should we send a letter to whomever the complainant is and suggest they put a FERB complaint in Farm Industry Review Board?
As environmental
because they're, and quote the environmental issues associated with it, because that's not ours to go, and we don't deal with those sorts of things.
So it comes under the province, under environment, or under FERB. Okay. Councillor Richter?
No, I'm fine.
Okay,
thanks.
thank you. All right. On the delegation we had, did council want to do anything on the Pharmacare delegation? Do you want to? Certainly. Here, you still have. Oh, here we go. You pushed your button. There you go. You got the mic.
You're on. What I'd like to do is the motion they've given us that we move it, pass it, and if it's passed, send a letter to the MPs, the MLAs, and LMLGA, UBCM, and FCM.
Okay, second by Councillor Long. Discussion on that? Oops, sorry. Hang on, I got to go back. Councillor Long, there you go.
In order to get a gold star, we need to get those 11 whereases down to about 4 or 5, so maybe they could do some editing there. 11 whereases is not.
We're just moving the motion, so.
But the motion.
Yeah. Are we satisfied with the way that it's written? Okay, so I'm going to call the question. What do I label this one as, Ms. Bauer? I2? I2? All right, call the question. Carries unanimously. Is there any other business? Councillor Davis?
Could I know that, I don't want to belabor it, Councillor Fox's motion, we have isn't there a horse lady expert that's with LEPs that we have brochures and all that? I wonder if, just to be on the light side, I wonder if we could send them a package with how to handle your horse manure. It might be a little maybe easier, or I guess you could, well, just instead of going in there like
Little educational package through LAPS?
I don't know. Yeah, because there is a gal up there her title is horse manure lady or something like that. Well, that's
maybe we could staff.
No,
So-
it's a nickname, and
good-
she's
good idea.
proud of it.
So staff can take it as direction just to make inquiries if LEPS has some expertise and they could send
Well,
something
it might maybe go over a little nicer than okay.
just take it as direction.
Thank you.
Okay, motion to
Termination.
terminate. Councillor Davis, second by Councillor Whitmarsh. And all those in favor, opposed, carried.